If a family can erase a name, then it can erase a soul. Those words echoed through my mind as I stood outside the Blackwood estate for the first time in nearly 30 years. The mansion looked exactly as I remembered it, its limestone walls glowing beneath the fading evening sun, its tall windows reflecting generations of pride and silence. The long driveway still curved through ancient oak trees, and the fountain still whispered as though time itself had refused to move forward. I adjusted my faded denim jacket, brushed a hand across my silver hair, and took one slow breath before walking toward the front entrance. Nobody expected me to return. Perhaps that was exactly why I had chosen this night. Inside, the annual family dinner had already begun. Crystal chandeliers illuminated the massive dining room, while polished silver reflected warm candlelight across the endless oak table. Isabel calmly poured wine beside David, pretending every tradition remained perfectly intact. Victoria sat with her usual composed expression, watching every conversation without revealing a single emotion. Eleanor remained beneath the chandelier with tired eyes that carried memories she had never shared. Ethan stood quietly near the staircase, observing everyone with the curiosity of someone who sensed invisible cracks beneath polished perfection. James opened the front door before I reached for the handle. His eyes widened for only a second before settling into a respectful nod. He did not speak my name. He simply stepped aside as though he had been waiting for this moment all along. Every conversation inside the dining room stopped the instant I entered. No one stood. No one welcomed me. The silence became louder than any argument ever could. Ethan looked directly at me with confusion rather than hostility. He had never seen me before, yet something in his expression suggested he already knew I belonged there. Then Thomas entered carrying an old leather portfolio secured with faded straps and a brass clasp darkened by age. He placed it carefully in the center of the table without saying a word. Every pair of eyes shifted toward it. I recognized the worn leather immediately. Charles Blackwood had carried that portfolio everywhere during the final years of his life. Isabel quietly broke the silence and asked why an old file should matter after so many years. Thomas rested both hands on the table before answering in a calm voice that filled every corner of the room. Because tonight we are not opening an old file. We are opening the first page of the history your family tried to erase. Thomas slowly released the worn leather straps, securing the old portfolio, while nobody around the table dared to interrupt him. The soft sound of aged leather against polished oak seemed impossibly loud inside the silent dining room. He carefully removed a stack of yellowed documents, each page protected inside clear archival sleeves that had preserved every signature, every seal, and every handwritten note. Ethan leaned forward slightly, unable to hide his curiosity, while I remained exactly where I stood, allowing the truth to arrive at its own pace. Thomas adjusted his glasses before placing the first document where everyone could see it. This is the original Blackwood family registry, certified 40 years ago, he explained. David immediately recognized the official seal embossed across the bottom corner because he had seen copies of similar records throughout his career. However, something about this page made him hesitate. His eyes moved slowly across each line before suddenly stopping. He looked at me, then back at the document, then toward Thomas once again. "There is another name here," he whispered. Thomas nodded without emotion. "There always was." Isabel quietly insisted there had never been another legal heir listed in the family's official history. Thomas calmly slid a second document across the table beside the first. The signatures matched perfectly. The registration numbers matched as well. Even the county certification remained intact. Sophia stepped forward and confirmed both records had been authenticated through the original courthouse archives earlier that week. No alteration, no forgery, no uncertainty. Ethan rose from his chair and walked closer to examine the documents himself. His expression changed from curiosity to disbelief. "If these records are genuine," he asked carefully, "then why have I never seen this version before?" Nobody answered immediately. Eleanor lowered her eyes toward the table, while Victoria folded her hands together with unusual tension. James remained quietly beside the doorway, as though he had carried this silence for decades. Finally, he spoke in a calm voice. "Because the records everyone inherited were copies. The originals never left Charles Blackwood's private archive." Ethan slowly turned toward me. There was no accusation in his face, only questions searching for honest answers. I met his eyes for the first time that evening and offered a small nod. Sometimes history disappears, I said quietly. Not because it is false, but because someone decides future generations should never read it. Thomas opened another archival sleeve before speaking again. These pages are only the beginning. The next documents explain exactly when the family history changed, who approved those changes, and why one name quietly disappeared from every story that followed. Thomas carefully arranged 3 more archival documents beside the original registry, while the silence inside the dining room became almost unbearable. Every page carried official county seals, notarized signatures, and dates stretching back decades. There was nothing dramatic about the evidence itself. Its power came from its quiet consistency. Each record repeated the same simple fact that no one around the table had expected to see. My name had never disappeared from the legal history of the Blackwood family. Only the versions shared within the family had changed. Sophia opened a large binder and placed certified courthouse copies beside the originals. She spoke with the calm confidence of someone presenting facts rather than opinions. Every document has been verified through public records, she explained. The registration numbers match. The signatures match. The filing dates match. Nothing has been altered since the day these records were created. David slowly removed his glasses and rubbed his forehead as though trying to understand how something so significant could have remained hidden throughout his entire life. Then every family record I inherited was incomplete, he said quietly. Thomas answered without hesitation. Incomplete is the correct word. False would not be legally accurate. Someone chose which pages future generations would receive. Ethan stepped closer until he stood beside the table, carefully comparing the official registry with the family genealogy book that had rested inside the mansion library for years. Entire entries matched perfectly until one section where a single branch of the family tree ended without explanation. Ethan looked from one page to the other several times before raising his eyes toward me. They did not remove everything, he observed. They only removed the connection. I gave a slow nod. That is often how history disappears. It is not erased all at once. One missing page becomes one missing name. One missing name becomes one forgotten generation. Eleanor quietly closed her eyes for a brief moment before speaking for the first time that evening. I remember when the genealogy book was replaced, she admitted softly. Charles told me the original should never leave his private study. I never asked why. Victoria turned toward her with visible surprise. You knew there were 2 versions? Eleanor lowered her eyes. I knew there were differences. I did not know how important those differences would become. James finally stepped away from the doorway carrying a small wooden archive box wrapped in dark green cloth. He placed it beside Thomas with careful hands. Mr. Charles instructed me that this box could only be opened after the family accepted the authenticity of the original records, he said quietly. Thomas rested one hand upon the unopened box before looking around the table. Inside this archive is the explanation for who decided to change the family history and the letter Charles wrote before his final days. James carefully untied the dark green cloth protecting the small archive box before stepping back in respectful silence. Thomas slowly lifted the lid, revealing several handwritten notebooks, sealed envelopes, and a single leather-bound journal resting neatly at the center. Nothing inside appeared expensive, yet every item carried the quiet weight of decades spent protecting a truth that had never disappeared, only waited. Thomas reached first for one sealed envelope bearing Charles Blackwood's unmistakable handwriting. Across the front, only a few words had been written, to be opened when the family is finally ready to listen. He carefully broke the wax seal and unfolded the letter. The room remained perfectly still as he began reading aloud. If these words are being heard, then Harrison has returned without anger, and my family has finally chosen truth over comfort. Do not mistake silence for absence. Harrison never abandoned this family. I asked him to step away until the day every generation could face the truth without destroying one another. No one moved. Even the fireplace seemed quieter than before. David slowly lowered his head while Ethan continued listening with complete attention. Thomas turned to the second page. There will come a time when some members of this family believe Harrison's name vanished because he surrendered his place. That is not true. His name remained exactly where it belonged in every legal record under my protection. Only the stories passed from one generation to the next were changed. Isabel finally spoke, although her voice lacked the confidence it had carried earlier that evening. Who changed those stories? Thomas did not answer immediately. Instead, he removed another document from the envelope. It was a handwritten memorandum signed by Charles many years earlier. Sophia examined it before quietly confirming the signature and date. Thomas continued reading. No court removed Harrison. No trust removed Harrison. No will removed Harrison. Fear removed Harrison from conversation. Pride allowed that silence to survive. Eleanor covered her mouth as tears slowly formed in her eyes. I remember that conversation, she whispered. Charles told us that some truths required patience because the family was not strong enough to carry them yet. Victoria looked toward Eleanor with disbelief. You never told anyone. Eleanor shook her head gently. I believed I was protecting everyone. Instead, I helped protect. The silence. Ethan looked toward me once again. This time there was no uncertainty in his expression. Only respect remained. Thomas carefully closed the letter before placing one final object on the table. It was an old brass key attached to a worn leather tag bearing only 3 handwritten words. Charles's private study. Thomas quietly looked around the room before speaking. Everything we have learned tonight explains why Harrison's name survived. What waits behind this door explains why someone wanted the family to forget it forever. No one reached for the brass key immediately. It rested quietly on the polished oak table beneath the warm chandelier light, reflecting decades of unanswered questions. Thomas allowed several moments of silence before carefully lifting another document from Charles Blackwood's archive. Unlike the previous records, this one carried the official seal of the Blackwood Family Trust together with signatures from Charles, Thomas, and 2 independent witnesses. Sophia reviewed every page before placing it where everyone could clearly see the final paragraph. The trust has never been amended, she said calmly. Every revision submitted during Charles's lifetime preserved the same legal succession. David slowly read each line for himself. His expression changed with every page until he quietly leaned back into his chair. Everything remained exactly as it was from the beginning, he whispered. Thomas nodded. Yes, the trust never removed Harrison. No legal instrument ever erased his position within the family. Victoria folded her hands tightly, while Isabel stared silently at the documents without attempting another objection. There were no missing signatures, no disputed filings, and no unexplained revisions. Every official record confirmed the same history. Ethan carefully examined the final page before looking toward me. Then everyone believed something that never actually happened, he said. I answered softly. People often inherit stories long before they inherit facts. James quietly stepped beside the fireplace and retrieved an old framed photograph resting upon a nearby cabinet. He carried it to the table and placed it beside the trust documents. The faded photograph showed Charles standing beside me on the front steps of Blackwood House many years earlier. Both of us smiled naturally, not as businessmen, but as family. Ethan studied the photograph with genuine surprise. This was taken after everyone believed Harrison had already disappeared, he observed. James nodded respectfully. Mr. Charles continued inviting him here. Their meetings simply remained private. Eleanor gently touched the edge of the photograph before speaking through quiet emotion. Charles always believed the family would eventually be ready. He said forcing the truth too early would only divide everyone even further. David looked toward me with sincere regret. You could have challenged every rumor. You could have gone to court. I met his eyes calmly. Winning a legal battle would never have restored trust. Charles wanted the truth to return through understanding, not victory. Thomas carefully gathered the trust documents before lifting the brass key once again. The legal questions have now been answered, he said quietly. What remains is deeply personal. He placed the key into my hand with deliberate care. Charles instructed that only Harrison could unlock his private study. Everything inside that room explains why preserving one forgotten name became the most important decision of his entire life. The brass key felt heavier than its size suggested as I closed my hand around it and quietly rose from the dining table. Nobody attempted to stop me. Without speaking, Thomas stepped aside while James walked toward the west hallway, carrying a small lantern even though the mansion lights remained bright. One by one, the family followed in complete silence. The long corridor leading toward Charles Blackwood's private study had not changed in decades. Framed family portraits covered the paneled walls, polished hardwood reflected the warm light from antique sconces, and every step echoed gently through the quiet mansion. At the very end of the hallway stood a tall oak door with an aged brass lock that had remained untouched since Charles's final days. James looked toward me respectfully. "No one has entered this room since we locked it together," he said softly. I slowly inserted the key into the lock. The mechanism turned smoothly, almost as though it had been waiting for this exact moment. As the heavy door opened, a quiet scent of old books and polished wood filled the hallway. Morning would not arrive for many hours, yet the study felt warm rather than forgotten. Shelves stretched from floor to ceiling, filled with carefully arranged journals, estate ledgers, handwritten correspondence, and bound family histories. Large windows overlooked the moonlit gardens, while an antique walnut desk remained exactly where Charles had left it. Nothing inside the room suggested secrecy for its own sake. Everything reflected careful preservation. Ethan stepped forward slowly, his eyes moving across the countless volumes lining the shelves. "He kept everything," he whispered. Sophia examined the shelves without disturbing a single document. "Every journal is labeled by year," she observed. "Every archive appears organized chronologically." Thomas smiled quietly. Charles believed future generations deserved complete records instead of selective memories. David slowly approached the desk where a single leather journal rested beneath an old fountain pen. Beside it lay a folded handwritten note addressed simply to Harrison. I carefully unfolded the page and immediately recognized Charles's familiar handwriting. The first sentence stopped everyone from speaking. "If you are reading this inside my study, then the family has finally become strong enough to remember every name exactly as history recorded it." Eleanor gently covered her eyes while Victoria remained completely still. Even Isabel lowered her gaze without attempting another argument. I placed the note back upon the desk before quietly looking around the room once more. Every shelf, every journal, every carefully preserved photograph reflected one simple truth. Charles had never hidden history to protect himself. He had protected history until the family became capable of accepting it together. Ethan looked toward the far wall where another locked cabinet stood beneath an old family portrait. James quietly removed a second smaller key from his pocket before saying, "The final answers Charles left behind have been waiting inside that cabinet for all of these years." James stepped toward the tall cabinet beneath the old family portrait and quietly placed the smaller brass key into the hidden lock. The mechanism released with a gentle click before the wooden doors slowly opened, revealing rows of carefully preserved archive boxes, each labeled in Charles Blackwood's precise handwriting. Every box represented a different chapter of the family's history: estate correspondence, trust revisions, personal journals, family photographs, property surveys. Nothing appeared random. Charles had organized every memory with the same care he had devoted to protecting the family itself. Ethan carefully removed the first archive box while Sophia helped place it upon the large walnut desk. Inside rested dozens of photographs arranged by date rather than by occasion. David picked up the first image and quietly stared at it. It showed Charles and me walking through the estate gardens years after everyone believed I had disappeared from the family's life. Another photograph showed us studying architectural drawings inside this very study. Another captured James serving coffee while Charles and I reviewed handwritten estate ledgers beside the fireplace. Every photograph quietly contradicted the story the family had accepted for decades. "He never stopped seeing you," Ethan whispered. James answered with quiet certainty. "Not once." Mr. Charles believed Harrison remained part of this family, whether anyone else recognized it or not. Eleanor gently smiled through tears as she recognized several photographs she had never known existed. "He always carried these with him," she said softly. "I thought they had been lost." Thomas carefully opened another archive box containing leather-bound journals. Each volume documented private meetings between Charles and me over nearly 3 decades. Sophia examined several entries before looking toward everyone gathered around the desk. "Every meeting is dated," she explained. "Every decision is explained." Charles recorded why he believed waiting would preserve the family rather than divide it. David quietly opened one journal at random and began reading aloud. History should never be rewritten to satisfy fear. It should be preserved until people possess enough wisdom to accept it. The room fell silent once again. Victoria slowly sat down beside the window, without speaking, while Isabel remained motionless, her earlier confidence replaced by thoughtful reflection. I looked across the study toward the countless journals filling the shelves before quietly speaking for the first time since entering the room. Charles asked me to promise that I would never return demanding recognition. He believed respect earned through patience would last far longer than recognition forced through conflict. Ethan closed the journal gently before meeting my eyes. "You kept that promise for almost 30 years. I nodded. Some promises become easier with time. Others become more difficult every single day. Thomas carefully reached into the final archive box and removed a large sealed envelope marked with today's date in Charles Blackwood's handwriting. He looked around the room before speaking quietly. "This is the final message Charles prepared for every member of the Blackwood family after the entire truth had finally been uncovered." Thomas carefully broke the seal on the final envelope while everyone remained gathered inside Charles Blackwood's study. No one reached for a chair. No one looked away. The quiet anticipation inside the room carried far more weight than any argument that had filled the mansion only hours before. Thomas unfolded the handwritten pages with great care before beginning to read. "If these words are being shared, then every member of my family has finally seen the records exactly as I preserved them. The greatest danger to any family is not disagreement. It is forgetting the truth simply because forgetting becomes easier than remembering." His calm voice echoed softly through the study as every sentence settled over the room. "The name that disappeared from your conversations never disappeared from my heart or from the law. Harrison remained exactly where he belonged because loyalty is measured by character rather than popularity." David quietly lowered his eyes while Ethan continued listening without missing a single word. Thomas turned to the second page. "Many people will ask why I allowed silence to continue for so many years. The answer is simple. Truth introduced before wisdom often becomes another reason for division. Truth introduced after patience becomes the beginning of reconciliation." Eleanor slowly smiled through tears as memories she had carried for decades finally began to make sense. Victoria remained silent beside the window while Isabel looked across the study toward me with an expression no longer shaped by resistance, but by reflection. Sophia carefully collected every letter already read and placed them inside fresh archival folders prepared for permanent preservation. James quietly closed several journal volumes before returning them to their proper shelves. Nothing inside the study would ever again need to be hidden. Ethan stepped toward the large family portrait hanging above the fireplace. "Every generation looked at this painting," he said softly. "None of us realized the real history was waiting only a few feet away." I joined him before the portrait and looked across the familiar faces preserved within the frame. "History does not disappear because documents vanish," I replied quietly. "It disappears when people stop asking honest questions." Thomas reached the final paragraph and paused briefly before reading Charles's closing words. "Do not restore Harrison's name because the law requires it. Restore it because every future child in this family deserves to inherit the complete story instead of a comfortable version of it." Complete silence filled the room after the final sentence. No one attempted to speak for several moments. The study itself seemed different now, no longer a place of hidden memories, but a room where every unanswered question had finally found its rightful place. Ethan slowly looked toward me before asking the one question that still remained. "When we leave this room tomorrow morning, how do we begin rebuilding everything the family allowed itself to forget?" The first light of morning slowly spread across the gardens of Blackwood House as we finally stepped out of Charles Blackwood's private study together. Hours earlier, we had entered carrying assumptions that had survived for decades. Now we carried documented truth instead. No one hurried away. No one argued. The silence between us no longer felt heavy with suspicion. It carried something entirely different. Understanding. James quietly closed the study door before placing both brass keys into a polished wooden box that would remain inside the family archives. Thomas stood beside him holding the original trust documents together with Charles's final letters. "These records will never again be separated," he said calmly. Every future generation will receive the complete history exactly as Charles intended. Ethan looked toward the old mansion before smiling for the first time that evening. The house feels different now, he admitted. Nothing changed about the building, yet everything changed about the family. David slowly walked toward me across the stone courtyard. For several moments, he searched for the right words before extending his hand. I cannot recover the years we lost, he said quietly, but I would like the years ahead to begin honestly. I accepted his hand without hesitation. Families cannot rewrite yesterday, I answered. They can only choose what tomorrow will remember. Eleanor joined us beside the fountain while Victoria quietly approached from behind. Neither woman attempted to defend the past. Neither searched for excuses. Instead, they simply stood together, allowing the truth to exist without resistance. Isabel finally stepped forward as well. Her voice remained calm. The story I believed was never complete. I helped preserve silence because I never questioned what I inherited. Sophia smiled gently. That is why complete records matter. Honest history protects every generation from repeating comfortable mistakes. James opened the front doors of Blackwood House as warm morning sunlight reached across the entrance hall. The family portrait hanging above the staircase remained exactly where it had always been, yet everyone who passed beneath it now understood something entirely different. Every face represented not only success and inheritance, but also patience, sacrifice, forgiveness, and responsibility. Ethan paused before the portrait one final time. No name was ever truly erased, he said softly, only forgotten. I looked across the family gathered together inside the home Charles had spent his life protecting. Forgotten names can always be remembered, I replied. Forgotten values require every generation to choose them again. As we quietly entered the mansion together, Charles's study remained locked behind us, not because its truth needed hiding, but because its purpose had finally been fulfilled. The family no longer needed secret rooms or hidden records. They possessed something far more valuable, the complete story. And from that morning forward, every child born into the Blackwood family would inherit not only a respected name, but also the truth that gave the name its meaning.